Hello and welcome to this special show on Rajya Sabha television. I am Vishal Dahiya and here we take a stock of the battle against COVID-19. Now in this particular battle, now we are in a stage where unlock is progressing slowly, and recently during Unlock 5.0 guidelines, it was decided that cinema halls or multiplexes will be allowed to reopen from 15th of October. Now, recently, the guidelines or the standard operating procedures have been released as far as operating of cinema halls or multiplexes are concerned, such as 50% sitting capacity as well as alternate sitting arrangements and several other safety aspects. Today, we will try and look at all those guidelines. We will have industry perspective as well, and we'll understand as to how this entire process of reopening cinema halls and multiplexes will move on from 15th of October. So first, let me introduce all the guests to you, beginning with Dr. Puneet Misra, Professor, Center for Community Medicine at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. We also have with us Mr. Komal Nahata, journalist and trade analyst, keeps a very close watch on the film world. And we have with us Mr. Akshaye Rathi as well, film exhibitor and director of Aashirwad Theatres Private Limited. Welcome all of you gentlemen to Rajya Sabha TV. Let me begin with you straight away, Mr. Rathi, and let's start by listening into industry reaction as far as this decision is concerned. Almost 7 months that the theatres have been closed.
Right, Mr. Dahiya, it's obviously a news that we've welcomed with open arms, and all of us as a sector are extremely thankful to the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of Health, and the R&D Ministry, who have been really supportive in these testing times and given the permission to finally open up after a span of 7 months. And it's not just about the financial implications of it to the sector. This is also about the livelihood of more than 20 lakh families, which earn their bread directly or indirectly from this sector. So it's obviously a news that we welcomed with open arms, but obviously this is the first step towards in our march towards normalcy. There are some states where we are still expecting permissions, without which the release of national films in Hindi or Hollywood would be tough. So yes, great first step, and we're hoping to move forward rapidly towards normalcy.
Okay. Clearly, the industry seemingly is happy out there with the decision. Let us talk about the guidelines now, specifically the standard operating procedures which have been released by the government, because once the reopening starts, there will have to be certain standards which will have to be maintained by all multiplex owners and the staff members out there, also the general public. Dr. Puneet Misra, if you could take us through, the highlights of those SOPs which will have to be, adhered to when anybody goes to cinema hall, or even the cinema hall owners as well as the staff and employees out there.
Yes, Vishal, if we go by these guidelines, there are a lot of things which have been opened before theaters. So, the preventive measures or the principles of public health which can prevent the spread of disease, they remain the same. And based on those principles, the government has issued guidelines for the multiplexes and cinema halls. And the basic thing is that while we are into unlock phase, while we are going to start, near normal activity, we should prevent the spread of the disease. And how we can do that? We can do that by social distancing, by universal use of masks, by cup etiquette, and all those things. That's why if you see the government, the guidelines which has been issued, they are in different, what are the general, precautions one has to take, like universal mask use, the respiratory the etiquette, and there should not be any spitting, then Arogya Setu. Government has specified very, important guidelines for the entry and exit points, how should people, they should go, and so that there is no overcrowding while they are entering the picture hall. Then seating arrangement is very important. Like they have given a diagram where they have shown that one seat should be left vacant, so that while they are watching the movie, they can minimize the risk of spread to other person. And then physical distancing norms are there. They have issued guidelines that most of the bookings and payments, they should be online, so that at the ticket window there should not be crowd accumulation to prevent the further spread of the disease. there are guidelines for the periodic sanitization of the theaters and these multiplexes, so that after once the show is finished, there should be proper sanitization of that area. And besides that, there is one important point for the workers as well. I mean, those who are working, those who have comorbid condition, or those who are elderly above 65, those workers should not be put on the areas where there is a lot of overcrowding or there is a direct public contact. They can work from the from the back office or something like that. So I think all the aspects are well taken, whether it is the safety of normal public, it is safety of the staff who is working in the cinema hall. So I think that if we follow these precautions and we go with these guidelines, we can have this entertainment activity go on, because for last 6 months, people, many of them, they are inside the house, and there's a lot of population in India. They cannot afford big screen TVs or home sound systems, so they are eagerly waiting for these cinema halls to open. And with this guidelines, I think it can be opened with minimum risk to the viewers.
Okay. Okay, indeed, everybody has been waiting for it, specifically the general public. From the entertainment point of view, we'll try and understand as to how prepared the industry is as well. But let's first look at the impact which it had the closure of cinema halls in the past 7 months or so. Let me bring in Mr. Komal Nahata here. Mr. Nahata, from your experience, what has been the impact of this lockdown, or the closure rather of all the cinema halls and multiplexes so far? Not only on those 20 lakh odd people who've been associated with that, but overall on the film industry and the path to recovery from here onwards as well. How difficult it might be?
Well, the impact has been humongous. I think in these last 7 months of lockdown, the film industry may have lost approximately 9,000 to 10,000 crore of rupees. And that includes the losses at the box office because no films were released, the losses in terms of interest on investments blocked for producers, etc., and the loss of shooting days. So no shooting activity, no recordings, no dubbings, no film releases, nothing has happened. So 9,000 to 10,000 crore rupees loss is not a small loss, and it may take months, probably a couple of years, for the industry to bounce back. Mm-hmm. And I say this because reopening of cinemas is only one part of the battle, sort of. The other part that is to be won is for cinema lovers to return to the cinemas. And this is beset with problems. One, because of the fear for their safety and security. People are still scared because the numbers of coronavirus cases are not going down. If they're going down only marginally. So whether they will be safe, and of course the cinemas, multiplexes, they all are sworn to observing hygiene, etc. But then it is a psychological thing also. So to inspire the confidence of the audience, that is also only one aspect. The other aspect is the spending power in the hands of the public. So many people have lost their jobs. So many businesses have shut down. Those who haven't lost their jobs and are lucky to have retained them, they are having had to take pay cuts. So the spending power in the hands of the people is definitely lower. And before entertainment, probably entertainment is the last on their priority list. Before that, they will be bothered about basics such as food, health, probably education, housing, etc., etc. So I think the industry has got a big battle ahead of it. But knowing the resilience of the industry people, knowing the good intentions of the industry people, I have absolutely no doubt that the film industry will bounce back. Yes, it's an uphill task, but I think the give and take formula will come into play where people will have to sort of cooperate and synergize and then really fight this post-COVID battle. I call it the post-COVID battle.
Okay, definitely. It is an uphill task. But Mr. Nahata, there is one more point here. You spoke about how it has hit the industry hard. In the meanwhile, in these 6-7 months, there have been some novel ideas which also have been experimented with by the industry. For example, some films being released on OTT platforms as well. That's a sort of a double-edged sword as well, because that puts the cinema owners and the multiplex owners at a loss out there. And how effective or how profitable is it for the industry per se to take that route?
See, there was no option for the producers since their investments, and one film, the investment could go up to 100 crore, 115, 120, 150 crore, depending upon the size of the film. There are some films, the investments in which were about 30 or 40 or 50 crore. But the producers realized that with uncertainty about when the cinemas would reopen, the best option to them would be to go to the OTT platforms and premiere their films there. The OTT platforms do screen these films, stream these films, but it's after a window of 8 weeks from the theatrical release. Bypassing the theaters and going directly on OTT platforms, the producers demanded more, and the streaming platforms were more than willing to oblige, because finally they would increase their subscriber base because they would be premiering those films. So it was a win-win situation for the streaming platform as well as for the producers.
Okay.
Having said that, because the producers were selling the films, the premiere rights of the films to the streaming platforms, the exhibitors, multiplexes and single screen cinemas definitely felt bad because they were going to bypass the cinematic route. And it is understandable that they would not have liked it. But in the given circumstances, if I were to view the entire industry's perspective, I think what has happened for the good, because at least that much blocked money. There are about 21 films I know of which have either been committed to OTT platforms or some of which have already been premiered. So a total of 21 films.
Okay.
So now those 21 films, even if we were to count as 50 crore per film, it means about 1,000 crore of rupees.
Okay.
1,000 crore.
1,000 crore rupees.
Now,
yes.
1,000 crore of rupees to be blocked. And if there is a way out by premiering on the OTT platform and then to liquidate those funds, it's good. Here, I would like to say that by convention, the first time this thing has occurred, films are being premiered on OTT platforms. Earlier, what used to be the case in the pre-COVID days, films were released theatrically. After a window of 8 weeks, they used to come on television and or on streaming platforms. This time, it is the streaming platforms who are premiered. I should think that multiplexes and single screen cinemas should now let bygones be bygones. They were angry with the producers who bypassed cinemas, but they should also think in terms of releasing those films which are already released, because the more options and the more choices you give to the cinema, to the audience, the faster they will return to the cinemas.
Okay.
And returning to the cinemas by the audience is of paramount importance, because till the producers of big films like Suryavanshi and 83 do not see huge number of people returning to the cinemas, they will not be inspired to release their films. So for their own good, single screen cinemas and multiplexes should be saying that, okay, this one time, we don't mind releasing the films which have been premiered on OTT platforms. It's easier said than done, but I think this is the best option available to ensure that there are footfalls in the cinema.
Okay. Let's take the industry reaction, the exhibitors' point of view on this as well. Mr. Rathi is with us, but Mr. Rathi, before we come to this aspect, let's move on to the guidelines specifically, and how prepared are exhibitors? Because as both Mr. Nahata is pointing out, in terms of it's going to be an uphill task from here onwards, and the guidelines are very specific about it. So how prepared are you guys to go ahead and resume operations and dispel that fear which Mr. Nahata was referring to as far as general audience is concerned?
Right. Well, see, all of us obviously realize that the flow of content will not be regularized for a while. It will take a few weeks before the producers of new films start, taking that leap of faith and releasing new films in the cinemas. So all of us realize that the first month or so, we're not looking at revenues. We're looking at making an investment with our efforts into reinculcating the trust of our audiences. So yes, all the SOPs that have been defined by the R&D ministry, in my opinion, they are very reasonable, very practically implementable. And in terms of our preparation, we were hoping that cinemas would open in August. So we started working towards, procuring material, towards training the staff. Didn't happen. Then we hoped it would happen in September. So again, that preparation cycle began and it didn't happen. Now that it's finally happening, we know what are the vendors from whom we to procure some material, How do we need to train our staff? So I think now we are fairly well prepared and raring to go. So I think 15th October is substantially good time from the time when the announcement was made for us to be able to deploy all those measures, to procure all the sanitization material that we'll need, and to make sure that our audience doesn't just feel safe, but they are indeed safe when they come to the cinema halls. So yes, we are raring to go and we're fairly well prepared as a sector in general.
Okay, okay. But in terms of adhering to guidelines, Akshay, because there are quite specific points out there: ensuring air conditioning, cooling, ensuring the food and beverage area is also free of any sort of infection out there, booking and payments to be done in specific ways. Perhaps more use of digital platforms, then sanitization of the premises, staggered show timings, and 50% capacity only. So that can be seen as an impediment as well, but this is the starting point. So is the industry altogether aware and ensuring the audience there, because the audience's trust and faith can only be won if at all all these guidelines are adhered to in letter and spirit?
Right. Well, absolutely, Vijayji. So all these guidelines will indeed be adhered to in spirit and in terms of the practicality of it. And having said that, I really think in my opinion, the first 1 month, like I said, will be an investment, and we realize that we are not going to be making money out of it. And for the packaged food, or for all these things that are spoken about in the SOPs. We have started negotiating with vendors. We know how we are procuring all that material. So all those things are kind of in place. And we're pretty confident that somewhere, so my belief is that a car only moves if there's fuel in it. And the audience in big numbers will only start coming when there's fresh, compelling content. Till then, while we are playing older content or some of the smaller titles which decide to release, it will give us time. It's good that a huge chunk of the audience won't come in early on, because if there are any teetering issues, this is our time in the nets.
Okay.
And this will ensure that we are war ready by the time a film like Suryavanshi or a film like 83 comes in. And all the systems will be well oiled. We'll be absolutely prepared to take that big chunk of the audience head on. And about the capacities, I think we are doing what it takes to make sure that the producers don't face losses. Because one thing that's happened is, like Komalji mentioned, a lot of films have gone the OTT route, or a lot of them, especially the Hollywood slate, has pushed itself to the summer of next year. So the number of films that will be coming to the cinemas in the next few months in volume are far fewer than what they would have been in normal times. So if we can play only to 50% capacity, we can still play a higher number of shows, because there aren't too many films that are coming together. So if in a, let's say, 4-screen or multiplex, a film like Suryavanshi would have probably got 12 to 15 shows. Now we have the ability to play 17 or 18 or 19 to make up for that lost capacity. And similarly, the industry has also devised ways to make sure that all these films reaches the maximum number of screens across the country, goes to the length and breadth of the country. So we are as a fraternity, producers, distributors, exhibitors, and providers of digital projection services like UFO and ECD, are working towards devising these systems which will minimize the financial negative impact of the lower capacity and the so-called paranoia of COVID on the financials of these films. So that's certainly something that's been worked upon very elaborately.
Okay. But Akshay, since you spoke about content and the producers and minimizing losses as well out there, are the exhibitors willing to go ahead and let bygones be bygones as far as the role of the OTT platforms therein is concerned, and the films being released by the producers, several of them on those OTT platforms, as Mr. Nahata was pointing out?
Right. Well, see, it's not a call for any of us individuals to take. These are calls that will be taken jointly by the associations of exhibitors and the associations of producers that come into play. Because we realize this is an exceptional scenario, and we realize that only exceptional solutions will allow all of us to get out of it. Because somewhere, even for the producers and actors, the benchmark that defines their stardom or defines that success is still the box office. So for them, the theatrical medium is as important as their content is important to us. So maybe as an exception, things could be worked out where the modus operandi of business from the past can be given an exception for a finite period, but it cannot be a scenario where we decide it with no questions asked. There have to be certain commitments made by the production lobby and by the exhibition lobby to work together towards getting out of this hole that we are in right now. So yes, those are calls that will be taken jointly by the associations. But having said that, I truly believe that, once in a way, it's better to not do business than to do bad business.
Okay.
So if this sets a precedent and films that have played on the OTT platforms come to the theaters later, it could, in a hypothetical scenario, lead a lot of producers to, think that, okay, let's sell to the OTT platforms, and then because theaters are at our mercy, let's offer it to them and see how they react. That is a precedent that nobody wants to set, because obviously the theatrical experience is the most premium consumption experience in terms of the cost, in terms of the effort, and in terms of the experience.
Okay.
And we'd certainly not, in my opinion, like to dilute that. It's a simple thing, after you've had some access to something free of cost, you possibly won't pay a lot of money for it. So while it's not an individual call, it's a call that will be taken by the fraternity as a whole. There are a lot of moving parts that need to be factored in before arriving at any kind of a decision.
Okay. Now that we are here and we're talking about it, let me also bring in, Mr. Nahata again before I go to Dr. Misra for his concluding comments on the show. Mr. Nahata, do you believe that this particular aspect of OTT versus, Cineplex or multiplex exhibitors out there is going to be a dominant theme from here onwards, or this will fizzle out as the time passes by and we, win over the COVID-19, situation, and we are out of it once?
See, my guess is that films are made for the big screen. Stars, producers, directors, audiences, everybody values the importance, significance, and the entertainment quotient which applies to the big screen. Films are made primarily for the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
So Akshaye's fear that this shouldn't set a precedent, I don't look at it as a fear. And when they are negotiating with the exhibition lobbies, negotiating with the production lobby, all they need to do is fix a cutoff date. Whatever deals between OTT platforms and producers that have been signed by 15th October need to be respected, and those films will be screened in the cinemas. Whatever deals are finalized after 15th October or whatever the cutoff date is, then we shall not screen those films.
Okay.
Currently, the cinema exhibition industry needs content, and they need content because they need footfalls. They need footfalls because they need more content. The bigger films have to release in the cinemas. So definitely, they have to say, we are ready to forgive and forget. And I always look at it this way. When the film industry is fighting a battle, what is production sector, distribution sector, and exhibition sector? It's an entire industry. We are trying to win the confidence of the public. And to win the confidence of the public, it's like a family. The film industry is a family. If there are differences of opinion in the family, but if we have to fight an external enemy, will we show the enemy that these bickerings or these differences of opinion are there between us? No, forget it. There is all the time in the world to sit and thrash it out. For the present, let us just say this is the cutoff date and all these films will be screened in the cinemas so that the public gets choice, the public comes to the cinemas, so that bigger producers feel inclined to come and release their films in the cinemas, so that the industry is revived.
Okay.
And once the industry is revived, I have absolutely no doubt that the old formula will return. In fact, it can return right from 15th October.
Okay.
Save for these films. And the old formula is films will be premiered in cinema halls on the big screen, followed by a window where they cannot release anywhere else. That window could be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it is. And then it will come on the television or the streaming platform.
Okay.
That pattern is not going to change. So the exhibitors have to understand that no producer, I don't think any producer is quite excited about releasing his film first on OTT platform. He's doing it in majboori. He's doing it because he has no option. He's doing it because his funds are locked.
Okay.
And once the cinemas start showing business, he's going to run to the cinemas, and cinemas and producers are brothers in arms. You have to understand that.
Okay.
OTT platforms are the outsiders, television channels are the outsiders, and they are happy where they are. So I think if at all, after a couple of years, after maybe 5 years, there will be content made specifically for OTT platforms. There is no dearth. So those contents can be streamed first, but there will be specific
Okay.
content for the big screen
Okay.
because there is no alternative to the big screen.
Okay,
I mean,
okay,
if I may just
and
clarify, I
ultimately
don't
it
think
is
there are
the
any
content
grudges
which is the king
users.
out there. But let
It's
me
just about
bring
setting
in
the precedent.
Dr. Puneet Misra here as well for the concluding comments, because what we are talking about here is ensuring the safety of everyone involved. When the content is there, but it might be of no use if the viewers don't come in, and to win their trust, their faith, as well as ensure their safety and the safety of those who are involved with the cinemas and multiplex owners as well. Dr. Misra, if you could take us through, the key points which need to be kept in mind by the multiplex owners as well as the viewers, the general public, while they come out and, want to have a good time, watch a movie in theaters.
Yes, Vishal, the most important thing is the health, right? We all want to remain healthy. I mean, nobody wants to get sick while they are watching movies or going for the multiplexes. So it becomes really very important that everybody follows the guidelines and the SOPs which has been issued. For example, a few of the things I have discussed. The other important point which I would like about the air conditioning, right? Air handling units. That becomes very important, that a person who is sitting inside a theater for 2 or 3 hours, there should be, proper circulation of the air handling unit. That should be proper, and they should maintain, I think, the same safety standards as you maintain in the aircraft. There should be a very less time when the air change takes place. It should maybe every 1 to 2 minutes the entire air should change. So there should be these precautions should be taken inside the hall. Then comes the precautions which I have discussed, whether they are about the mask use, social distancing, cup etiquette, or anything. Besides that, government has done their part. They have issued the guidelines. Now it is on the multiplex owners and their managers to implement those guidelines in the true spirit and in the way the government issued.
Okay.
The third responsibility lies with the viewers and the general public. I mean, once you are inside the cinema hall, you should not take out your mask. I mean, you should not think that, okay, it's dark. Now I'm inside, I can take it out. So I think everyone should play their own responsibility and take, all the precautions. Then you can watch these movies. You can enjoy, going to multiplexes or cinema halls again with minimum risk to your health. So I think taking all the precautions. Again, the precautions are you should wear mask all the time. All the time while you are inside. Keep social distancing. I mean, the seats which are marked not to sit, which are crossed, you should not change the seat while you are watching the movies. I mean, keep yourself safe and others safe. Wash your regularly sanitize your hands. If you want to eat anything, it should be packed. I mean, that is also in the guidelines what kind of food is allowed. And many people spit. I mean, many they use different tobacco products or gutka and all those things, and those things should be very strictly, implemented, because we are concerned about the health of the people who are consuming that, and more so for the people who are coming to watch the movie. Here, multiplex owners, they should also consider the safety of their staff in the way government has, made the guidelines. Those who are senior citizens or those who have comorbid conditions, they should be placed in a place where they don't have direct public contact to minimize their risk. Ultimately, you want your viewers safe, you want your staff safe, you want everybody safe. So these are my words, that with these SOPs, probably we would be reaching to the situation which we call near normal.
Okay, there it is. Ensuring everybody is healthy and safe. That's what the target is, and all the stakeholders need to work towards that only. Thank you so much, Dr. Puneet Misra, Mr. Akshaye Rathi, as well as Mr. Komal Nahata, for sharing your views with us and our viewers. There it is, all about the reopening of cinema halls or multiplexes. There are strict guidelines which have been put in place by the government, and as our panelists were pointing out, all stakeholders will have to ensure that these guidelines are adhered to while the reopening of cinema halls takes place from 15th of October onwards. We'll come back again with a different topic. Till then, you keep watching Rajya Sabha television, and please do not forget to wear face mask when you step out of your house. Thank you.